stopping the bad habit is a surface level solution to a deep-rooted problem. And if you just cut up the top of the plant and the roots are still there, it's going to grow right back up. Welcome back to another episode of Initial Impressions. My name is Kayli Pommering and I'll be your host today. 2025. Wow, can you guys really believe that is 2025 right now? I'm absolutely shook. I remember putting out my first episode near the beginning of 2023 in April. And man, it's almost been 2 full years since I started this show. For those of you who have been with me, truly, thank you so much. Thank you for being willing to open your mind to new perspectives, to allow me to challenge your beliefs a little bit and share my experiences. I promise I'm always challenging my own beliefs too. That's why the podcast is called Initial Impressions, because it's my initial perspective on these things that I'm learning about. And as always, this is about my experience, and sometimes I share other people's experiences too that I hear about or that they share with me. But at the end of the day, all of our experiences are going to be unique, but I'm sharing what has helped me heal and find peace and live more authentically and confidently and follow my life's purpose and passion. And this journey has been a wild ride, and it started way before this podcast, but it's a privilege and an honor that you guys tune in and are willing to hear me out and open your minds and think about things from a different perspective. And I'm excited for us to continue growing and evolving together and really just learning about the mysteries of the universe and learning about ways that we can be better people and better versions of ourselves. So to kick 2025 off, we're just going to get right into it, okay? We're going to talk about breaking bad habits and the surprising reason that you're struggling to. So when it comes to bad habits, they can come in a whole lot of different forms, okay? I'm tempted to list off bad habits, but I don't want you to feel like I'm judging you. So if when I say bad habit, something comes to mind, maybe consider that for this show, okay? Because as always, I'm not trying to tell you how to live. I'm trying to help you help yourself. Come to terms, come to peace, live authentically, and show up as the version of you that you want to be. And that might look very different from the version of myself that I want to be. And absolutely nothing is wrong with that. And it is not my place to tell you that. So as we're having this conversation, just whatever pops to your mind. If there's a bad habit, if you clicked on this video and you saw the title, you probably had one in mind. And if you didn't, then maybe this will be good preparation for if something comes up for you. So let's get into it. When it comes to a bad habit, I think what's important to acknowledge here is that bad habit is meeting some kind of need for you, or you would have stopped already. So what do I mean by that? If you're doing something that you know hurts you, I find it really odd that you would do that unless you gained in some way, even if it was extremely short-sighted. So some kind of temporary relief. And even if it's barely any, even if it's mostly bad for you, does it give you a dopamine hit when you do it? Do you feel a little bit more safe and secure? Does it make you feel a little better about yourself? Does it make you feel a little more comfortable? Sometimes our bad habits, we do them because of this short, fleeting little thing that we get from it. Now, that wouldn't be the only reason we do it, or we likely would have already stopped, because there's lots of other ways to get dopamine hits. There's lots of other ways to promote feelings of safety and security in your life. So why the bad habit? Why the bad habit that makes us feel ashamed, that makes us feel judgmental towards ourselves or insecure in the long run when we look back on our behavior? How do you feel? I want you to put yourself in an observer position of your life for a second, an observer position of your feelings. I want you to reflect back on any bad habit that you feel like you might be perpetrating in your life right now. And I want you to imagine doing it. Imagine how you felt after you did it for that fleeting moment. And now I want you to think back on that behavior and how do you feel about it now? How do you feel about that action that you decided to take that you have deemed a bad habit? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel exposed? Do you feel ashamed? Do you feel afraid? Challenge yourself to actually sit in the feeling. This isn't about making yourself feel bad. I don't want you to think that punishing yourself is going to get you the results you want because it's actually not. In fact, punishing yourself is probably why you're doing it. So we like to think that it was the habit that happened first and then the shame that came after. But usually it's the other way around. And the shame was first. And we sought the bad habit because we didn't know what to do with the shame. And when we found the bad habit, it gave us a temporary, very short, maybe some other habits that last a little longer. Probably just depends on what the habit is. It gives you that feeling of relief. Maybe you don't care for a second. Maybe it makes you feel a little bit better about yourself for a moment. Whatever it may be, maybe it makes you feel a little more comfortable. Maybe it makes you less self-conscious. Maybe it gives you a rush of dopamine hit, a little feeling of excitement. But you chased that short, fleeting feeling because the shame, the guilt, the judgment, it was already there. So why was it already there? Why did we already have shame, guilt, judgment, XYZ, whatever it looks like for you? Why did we have that before the habit? Now we're really getting to the nitty-gritty, right? Because we think that all the work is in getting ourselves to stop doing something, but really the work is figuring out what unmet need do we have that we've been trying to use this bad habit to fulfill. You're going to spend so much energy and time trying to force yourself to stop something just for the sake of stopping it. And odds are, when people usually do that and they don't get to the real root of the problem, when they don't find that real unmet need there, they actually end up just like filling in another bad habit like right after. They will find something else to give them that temporary feeling of relief. So it's time to figure out what we're avoiding. What is it that we're running from? What is this giving us a temporary release from? And if it's shame, then okay, let's talk about shame. Let's talk about judgment. Why do we have a habit of shaming and judging ourselves? Think about when you've made the most growth in your life, and it's typically where you followed your excitement, where you didn't doubt yourself and you put your heart into it. So if growth isn't happening where shame and judgment is, then why would we associate our obsession with improving towards shaming and judging and guilting ourselves over anything? Perhaps it's just a mistake that you made that week that you overanalyzed. So it comes back to this. Is it a addiction that you have to this bad habit, or is it an addiction you have to shaming yourself? And could you be open to potentially releasing the need to stop shaming yourself? Because the ironic thing is when you stop beating yourself up for that which you want to stop, it becomes a million times easier to stop. I'm going to say that again. When you stop beating yourself up and shaming yourself and judging yourself for this habit that you're wanting to break, when you can release the need to judge yourself, it is going to be 100 times easier to stop. Because the need that needed to be met is being met by your own approval. Okay, so let's talk about some reasons why you could have a habit of shaming yourself. Because maybe you're sitting here like, okay, but why would I do that? Why would I grow up with a habit of shaming myself? Okay, let's talk about the type of language that was used around you as a kid. Were you made to feel like you needed to always be better? Like it wasn't quite perfect enough, like you needed to just do a little more, you needed to give a little more, something about you wasn't quite right, just this constant perfectionist mentality. Were your faults pointed out a lot more than your strengths? Were people always overanalyzing your behavior? Did it make you self-conscious of yourself, or you're kind of always looking over your shoulder? Because the way that we communicate with ourselves is oftentimes a mimic of the way we were communicated to as a child. So if as a child we were taught shame to improve, if that's what was, pushed upon us, well, we see how far that got us because we're struggling with this bad habit, right? Shame to improve is not working very well. So maybe it's time to adopt a new theology. Maybe it's time to accept that we were raised to believe that the shame and the judgment and the guilt would make us better, but it actually doesn't. And we're actually not improving because of it. And what would grace look like? What would it look like to give yourself grace instead? What would it look like to give yourself compassion? There's a child in you that maybe isn't used to that. And if you really think about it, I know there's been times where I've thought about the things that I say to myself in my head, and I've thought, whose voice is that really? And I remember a couple years ago when I was doing this work, and I started realizing, wow, this voice that's nitpicking the hell out of me is not even my voice. It was somebody in my life that I grew up with, and someone who used to nitpick on me a lot. And I remember thinking, like, it's her voice that I'm hearing in my head. So can you validate that part of you that was overly judged, overly shamed, overly critiqued? How would you talk to a child that made a mistake and needed some assistance or some guidance? Would you shame them into correct action, or would that look differently for you? What would that look like? How would you help a friend that makes a mistake? How would you comfort a friend? How would you encourage a friend? Encouragement is such a stronger, more powerful motivator than shame and judgment are. But we're so tempted to fall back on shame and judgment because a lot of us were raised to believe that that's what breeds results. Once again, we see how far that is getting us. And even if you're getting some external results, what about the internal ones? Maybe shame and judgment have been forcing you to take tons of action, and maybe you've been able to see a little bit of results in your physical reality from that. Maybe you've been able to be a little more successful, whatever it may be, but how's it making you feel? Is it improving your quality of life? What's the point of the external success if internally you're lacking? So it's crazy. We try to come up with all these plans, how we're going to stop, but if that need's not met, it's not going to work. And that's why we get so frustrated with ourselves over and over and over again. We're trying to be different, trying to erase this part of us, but we're never giving our soul, our inner child, what it needs to move past this, to heal, to feel fulfilled, to feel safe, to feel secure in a healthy, genuine way, because your ego is tempting you to avoid with your bad habit. But stopping the bad habit is a surface level solution to a deep rooted problem. And if you just cut up the top of the plant and the roots are still there, it's going to grow right back up. So, how can you give yourself a little bit of grace? What would giving yourself grace look like? Maybe you say, it's okay that I haven't figured it out yet. I don't have to be perfect tomorrow. I want to stop this bad habit because I love and I care about myself. I care about my reputation. I care about my body. I care about my identity. I care about my integrity. I value who I am as a person. I don't have to be ashamed of myself. No one's perfect. Neither am I. I don't need to be perfect to have connection. I don't need to be perfect to experience love. I don't need to be perfect to experience growth and expansion. So if these things are true, then I don't need to shame myself. And if you can just let the resistance the resistance of the shame, of the judgment, if you can let that wash away, it's going to be so much easier for you to not only stop the bad habit, but step into a good one. A habit of meeting your own emotional needs, a habit of facing the discomfort and asking what it needs from you. Now, I know all of this can sound easier said than done. I know that facing these really strong emotions, I know that this can be easier said than done. I know that facing these emotions can be really difficult. I know that figuring out what the unmet need is sometimes can be really hard. I like to think about their opposites sometimes. So if I'm experiencing shame, what's the opposite of shame? And if whatever comes to mind for you, then I usually tend to think, okay, well, that seems to be what I'm lacking, what I'm missing. So maybe that could help. But this type of self-inquiry and this type of self-reflection, it can be challenging to do on your own. And that's why I started coaching, because I want to help facilitate these conversations for people where they can have these candid, emotional conversations with themselves. Me coaching you is not about me telling you how to live. Me coaching you is helping you to better understand yourself so you can show up as the version of you that you want to be, so you can meet your own needs. So this is an insight into what some of that process can look like. But I just wanted with this episode to remind you that you can't change, or rather, it would take forever to change your internal world from the external. But it's way more efficient and fulfilling and effective for you to change your external world by changing your internal world. And that is when really just becoming your best friend, your teammate, your supporter, where you can really just channel that energy of providing for yourself, taking care of yourself, where you can let other people off the hook. And you can step into this confidence and trust with yourself. It feels so good to have it. It feels so good to experience that level of connection. And it really unlocks something. And after spinning your wheels for a really long time trying to stop a bad habit, the relief of not even really being that tempted by the habit anymore because you met the emotional need, I mean, it is like a weight falls off your shoulders. So I hope this episode was helpful. I hope that this starts to get you thinking a little bit differently, challenging these negative emotions, challenging your tendencies, really just starting by being an observer and asking why more often is going to unlock more than you can even imagine, and toning down the judgment in your head if you can, reminding yourself that you don't have to be ashamed by your imperfections. No one is perfect. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, please leave a like, a comment, review, all the things. And if you think that there is someone that this could help, I would appreciate if you would send it to them. And as always, I hope that you are leaving more at peace than you came.